What happens when a simple online transaction becomes your worst nightmare? When the person at your door isn't who they claim to be? Tonight, we're diving into 3 terrifying true stories that prove sometimes the most dangerous predators are hiding behind a computer screen, waiting for their next victim. These aren't urban legends. These aren't campfire tales. These are real experiences from real people who barely escaped with their lives. I'm your host at Silent Fear, and what you're about to hear will make you think twice before ever posting on Craigslist again. Before we begin, if you enjoy terrifying true stories like these, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We upload bone-chilling content every single week, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Also, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. We love hearing from our audience all around the world. Now let's get into tonight's first story. Picture this. You're a young woman living alone in a small 1-bedroom apartment in the city. Money's tight, and you're trying to furnish your place on a shoestring budget. Every day, you scroll through Craigslist, searching for deals on furniture, appliances, anything that'll make your empty apartment feel more like home. Our storyteller, who we'll call Emma for privacy, had been doing exactly this for weeks. One afternoon, while browsing through the endless listings, she stumbled across what seemed like the perfect find. A leather couch, barely 2 years old, in excellent condition, and the seller was practically giving it away for just $50. The catch? They were moving out of state in 2 days and needed it gone immediately. Emma looked at the photos attached to the listing. Beautiful brown leather, minimal wear, exactly what she'd been hoping to find. The post had only been live for 20 minutes, so she quickly sent a message expressing her interest. Within 5 minutes, she received a response from the seller, a man who identified himself as Marcus. They exchanged several messages back and forth. Marcus explained that he lived about 30 minutes away and asked if Emma could come pick up the couch that evening around 8 o'clock. Emma told him she'd need to borrow a friend's truck to transport it, but she could make it work. That's when Marcus made an offer that seemed incredibly convenient at the time. He said he actually had a truck himself and wouldn't mind delivering the couch to her, since he'd be driving through her area anyway. He'd drop it off. She'd hand him the cash, and the transaction would be complete. It seemed like the perfect solution. Emma sent him her home address without a second thought. About an hour later, as Emma sat in her apartment waiting, an uncomfortable feeling began creeping over her. She'd just given her exact home address to a complete stranger from the internet. Someone she knew nothing about. Someone who could be anyone. She tried to rationalize the anxiety away. People conduct Craigslist transactions every single day. This is normal. She was probably just being paranoid. 8 o'clock arrived, and Emma received a text message from Marcus saying he was 15 minutes away. She gathered the $50 in cash and positioned herself by the window, watching the parking lot below. At approximately 8:20, she spotted a beat-up pickup truck pulling into the lot. A man climbed out of the driver's seat, but something was immediately wrong. He didn't walk to the back of the truck to unload a couch. He didn't open the tailgate. He simply started walking toward Emma's building, completely empty-handed. Emma watched as the man disappeared from her view, entering the building. A few seconds later, there was a knock at her door. She approached cautiously, opening it with the chain lock still engaged. Standing in the hallway was a man who appeared to be in his mid-40s, wearing a stained gray t-shirt and faded jeans. He looked rough, like he'd had a long, difficult day. "Hey, you're here for the couch?" Emma asked through the narrow gap in the door. The man nodded. "Yeah, Marcus. We texted earlier." "Where's the couch?" Emma asked, confusion evident in her voice. "Oh, it's still in the truck. I just wanted to check out your place first. Make sure it'll fit through the doorways and everything. These older buildings sometimes have really narrow hallways." The explanation seemed reasonable enough. Emma undid the chain lock and allowed him inside. The moment he stepped past her into the apartment, she noticed something disturbing. He wasn't examining the doorways or measuring spaces with his eyes like he'd claimed. Instead, he was scanning the room, looking at her belongings. His gaze lingered on her television, her laptop sitting on the coffee table, her personal items scattered around the space. "So, which way's the living room?" Marcus asked, even though they were literally standing in it. Emma's apartment was tiny. The entire layout was visible from the front door. "This is it," Emma replied, her discomfort growing with each passing second. Marcus walked over to the window and peered out at the parking lot below, then turned back to face her. "You live here alone?" Emma's heart started racing. That question felt wrong on every level. "My roommate's just out right now," she lied instinctively. "She'll be back any minute." Marcus smiled, but there was nothing friendly about the expression. That's cool. Without asking permission, he began walking past Emma toward the small hallway that led to her bedroom and bathroom. "Mind if I use your bathroom real quick? It was a long drive." Emma wanted desperately to say no, but she didn't know how to refuse without seeming confrontational or rude. What if she was wrong? What if he really was just a normal guy trying to sell a couch? "Sure, it's the first door on the right," she heard herself saying. Marcus disappeared down the hallway, and Emma heard the bathroom door close. The moment she was alone, she rushed to the window and looked down at his truck from a better angle. From this vantage point, she could see directly into the bed of the pickup truck. It was completely empty. No couch, no furniture of any kind. Nothing. Terror flooded through Emma's body. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone and called her friend Sarah, whispering frantically when she answered. "Sarah, I think I'm in serious trouble. I let some guy from Craigslist into my apartment, and I don't think he actually has a couch. His truck is completely empty." "What? You need to get out of there right now." Sarah's panicked voice came through the phone. That's when Emma heard it. The bathroom door opening. "I can't. He's coming back," she whispered, quickly ending the call and shoving her phone into her pocket. Marcus walked back into the living room, wiping his hands on his jeans. Emma noticed immediately that he'd positioned himself between her and the exit. She was trapped in her own apartment. "So where's the couch?" Emma asked, trying to keep her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "Oh yeah, about that," Marcus said, taking a deliberate step closer to her. "I actually need to tell you something." Emma took a step backward. "What?" "The couch got sold earlier today, right before I left. I tried to text you, but I guess the message didn't go through." Emma pulled out her phone with trembling hands. There were no new messages. "But you said you were already in the area." Marcus shrugged casually. "Yeah, well, I was. And since I was already coming this way, I figured I'd stop by and see if you were interested in anything else I have for sale." "Like what?" Emma asked, her hand slowly moving toward the doorknob behind her. "I've got some other furniture, electronics. Could give you some really great deals." He was definitely moving closer to the door now, further blocking her escape route. "I'm not interested," Emma said firmly. "I think you should leave." For a long moment they stood there in silence, just staring at each other. The tension in the room was suffocating. Then Marcus smiled again, that same deeply unsettling smile. "You sure? I've got some really nice stuff in storage." "I'm sure. Please leave." Emma's voice was stronger now, more forceful. Marcus held up his hands in a gesture of false reasonableness. All right, no problem." But he didn't move toward the door. Instead, his eyes roamed around the apartment one final time, taking in every detail. "This is a nice place you got here. Pretty isolated, though. Top floor, end of the hallway. I bet not many people can hear much up here, huh?" That statement was the final straw. Emma grabbed the doorknob, swung the door open wide, and said loudly enough for anyone in the hallway to potentially hear, "Thanks for stopping by, but like I said, my roommate's going to be here any second, and we've got plans tonight." Emma could see the calculation happening behind Marcus's eyes. He was debating something, weighing his options. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he began walking toward the door. But he moved slowly, deliberately. As he passed Emma, he stopped and leaned in uncomfortably close. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Maybe I'll come back sometime. You know, when I have more inventory to show you." Emma didn't respond. She couldn't. She just wanted him gone. The moment he stepped into the hallway, she slammed the door shut with all her strength, immediately engaging both the deadbolt and the chain lock. She ran to the window and watched as Marcus climbed back into his truck. She watched as he started the engine. She watched as he drove away, disappearing into the night. Only then did she allow herself to break down, her entire body shaking uncontrollably as she fumbled for her phone to call the police. When the officers arrived approximately 15 minutes later, Emma told them everything that had happened. They took detailed notes, but their news wasn't encouraging. Since Marcus hadn't actually done anything illegal, there wasn't much they could do in terms of immediate action. However, they did run the license plate number that Emma had managed to remember in her panic. The results were chilling. The truck was registered to someone named David, not Marcus, and David had an extensive criminal record, multiple breaking and entering charges, assault, and one attempted kidnapping charge that hadn't resulted in a conviction due to insufficient evidence. The officer explained to Emma that this was a known scam tactic. Predators post fake advertisements for furniture or other desirable items at prices too good to pass up. They collect home addresses from interested buyers. Then they show up at those homes to case them for future robberies, or worse, they try to assault their victims right then and there if they determine the person is vulnerable enough and alone. Emma moved out of that apartment exactly 2 weeks later. She couldn't stand being there anymore, knowing that a dangerous predator had been inside her home, had seen where she lived, had learned the layout of her space. The police never managed to locate David or Marcus or whatever his real name actually was. The phone number he'd used was disconnected. The Craigslist account was deleted. For all anyone knows, he's still out there right now, posting fake advertisements and showing up at people's homes, looking for his next victim. Our second story tonight proves that even when you think you're taking all the right precautions, predators can still find a way to manipulate the situation. This incident occurred last summer and involves a young man we'll call Tyler. Tyler had been trying to sell his old gaming laptop online for several weeks. He'd posted advertisements on multiple platforms, including Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. But he wasn't getting much interest. Everything about his listing was reasonable. The laptop was in good condition, barely 3 years old, and he was asking $800, which was actually below market value for the specs. After a couple of weeks with no serious buyers, Tyler finally received a message that seemed almost too good to be true. Someone was offering to pay his full asking price of $800 with no negotiation, no attempts to lowball him, no requests for additional photos or specifications. The buyer simply stated they wanted the laptop and could meet that very same day. The buyer identified himself as Chris, at least according to his online profile. They quickly worked out the details. They would meet at a coffee shop downtown at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Tyler made sure to select a busy, well-populated location. Lots of foot traffic, lots of witnesses, very public. He even told his girlfriend exactly where he was going, when he'd be there, and when she should expect him back. Tyler thought he was doing everything right, taking every sensible precaution. He arrived at the coffee shop approximately 10 minutes early and secured a table near the large front windows. The place was absolutely packed with the lunch crowd, which made Tyler feel secure. He ordered a coffee and settled in to wait. At exactly 2 o'clock, Tyler's phone buzzed with an incoming message from Chris. The text said he was running about 15 minutes late, but was definitely on his way. Those 15 minutes stretched into 30, then 45. Tyler sent several follow-up messages asking if Chris was still planning to come, but he received no response. After nearly an hour of waiting, Tyler was gathering his things to leave when his phone finally rang. It was Chris. "Hey man, I'm so sorry," Chris said, and he genuinely sounded apologetic. "My car broke down about 10 minutes from where you are. I'm dealing with a whole tow truck situation right now. Listen, is there any way you could come to where I am? I've got the cash ready. I really want to buy that laptop. I just can't get my car to move." Tyler hesitated. This felt like it was going against all his instincts about conducting safe transactions. But Chris quickly added that he was at a gas station, which was also technically a public place with people around. He provided Tyler with the address, and when Tyler checked his GPS, it showed the location was genuinely only 12 minutes away. Against his better judgment, Tyler agreed. He packed up the laptop, got in his car, and drove to the address Chris had provided. It was indeed a gas station just as Chris had described. But when Tyler pulled into the parking lot, he immediately noticed something felt off. This was one of those older, run-down gas stations that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1980s. There were only 2 other cars in the entire lot, and Tyler didn't see any tow truck anywhere. Tyler parked his car near the front entrance and sent a text message to Chris saying he'd arrived. Chris responded almost instantly, saying he was around the back of the building. He explained that the tow truck was back there, examining his vehicle. Every instinct Tyler possessed was screaming at him that something was wrong. But he'd already driven all the way there. The laptop was right there in his bag. He just wanted to complete the sale and go home. Tyler grabbed the laptop bag and began walking around the side of the building toward the back. The moment he turned the corner, Tyler realized he'd made a catastrophic mistake. There was no tow truck. There was no broken down car. Instead, there were 3 men standing there waiting for him. One of them stepped forward, and Tyler immediately recognized him as Chris from the profile photo. "Hey, thanks for coming out," Chris said, but the friendly, apologetic tone from the phone call had completely vanished. The other 2 men moved deliberately, positioning themselves on either side of Tyler, cutting off his escape routes. "Where's your car?" Tyler asked, already backing up slowly. "Oh, I lied about that," Chris said with disturbing casualness. "See, $800 is a lot of money for a laptop. I figured, why pay $800 when I could just pay nothing at all?" Tyler clutched the laptop bag tighter against his chest. "I'm leaving right now." One of the other men, a tall individual with a completely shaved head and arms covered in tattoos, stepped directly in front of Tyler, blocking his path. "Just give us the laptop and nobody gets hurt here." Tyler looked around frantically. The back area of the gas station was completely hidden from the main road. Even if he screamed at the top of his lungs, nobody would hear him. He was trapped. "Look, just take it," Tyler said, holding out the bag with shaking hands. "I don't want any trouble. Just take the laptop." Chris snatched the bag from Tyler's hands, but he didn't step aside to let Tyler leave. "What else you got on you? Phone? Wallet? Come on, man, I gave you the laptop. That's what you wanted." The tall man moved even closer, invading Tyler's personal space. "Empty your pockets. Now." With trembling hands, Tyler pulled out his phone and wallet. Chris grabbed both items immediately and started rifling through the wallet, removing all of Tyler's cash and credit cards. Tyler's mind was racing, desperately trying to figure out a way to escape this nightmare situation. "What about your car keys?" Chris asked, looking up from the wallet. "That your car parked out front? Looks pretty nice from here." That's when the full horror of the situation became clear to Tyler. This wasn't just a simple robbery. They were planning to take everything. His laptop, his phone, his wallet, his car, and probably hurt him badly enough to ensure he wouldn't immediately call the police. Before anyone could say anything else, a voice called out from somewhere near the front of the building. "Hey, is everything okay back there?" "Suck to you." Older man, probably in his mid-60s, had walked around the corner. He might have been an employee of the gas station, or perhaps just a customer who'd heard something suspicious. The 3 men looked at each other, clearly not expecting any interruption to their plan. "Yeah, we're good," Chris called back, but the tension in his voice was obvious. The older man looked at Tyler, then at the 3 men surrounding him, and recognition dawned on his face. He could see that something was very wrong. "You need me to call somebody, son?" he asked Tyler directly, already pulling out his phone. That was the only opening Tyler needed. He bolted past the tall man, sprinting toward the older man as fast as his legs could carry him. Behind him, he heard one of the men yell something, but Tyler didn't dare look back. He and the older man ran together to the front of the gas station, and the moment they were inside, the employee locked the door behind them. He immediately called 911 while Tyler stood at the window, watching as the 3 men jumped into a car he hadn't even noticed and peeled out of the parking lot. Tires screeching, the police arrived within 10 minutes. Tyler gave them every piece of information he had. The phone number Chris had used to contact him, the profile details from the selling site, physical descriptions of all 3 men, everything. The officers' faces were grim as they took notes. Turns out the phone number belonged to a burner phone that was already disconnected by the time police tried calling it. The online profile was completely fabricated, stolen photos, and a fake name. And this wasn't these criminals' first robbery. They'd done this exact scam multiple times before. They'd find people selling valuable items online, pretend to be interested buyers, lure them to that same abandoned gas station and rob them. Sometimes it was just robbery. But there had been 2 previous cases where the victims ended up hospitalized with serious injuries. Tyler never recovered his laptop. He never got his cash or credit cards back either. He had to cancel everything, file police reports for his insurance company, and deal with the financial aftermath for months. But what really disturbed Tyler, what kept him awake at night, was how easily he'd fallen for their manipulation. He thought he was being safe by initially meeting in a public place, but they'd maneuvered the situation, made it seem reasonable, and even necessary to go to a second location. And he'd fallen for it completely. The detective assigned to Tyler's case explained that these criminals were sophisticated. They'd hit an area a few times, then move on to a completely different city or state before law enforcement could establish any kind of pattern or set up a sting operation. They're probably still out there right now, posting fake buyer inquiries and robbing desperate sellers who just want to make a little money. That older man saved Tyler from something much worse that day. If that employee or customer or whoever he was hadn't walked around the building at that exact moment, Tyler might not have made it home at all. Our final story tonight is perhaps the most disturbing of all, because it involves a predator who'd found a way to make his crimes technically legal, at least on paper. This happened to a young woman we'll call Jennifer. She'd been searching desperately for months to find an affordable apartment to rent. Everything in her limited price range was either a complete disaster or located in neighborhoods where she didn't feel safe walking alone at night. So when Jennifer stumbled across a listing for a studio apartment in a decent area for only $600 per month, she couldn't believe her luck. It seemed almost too good to be true. The photographs attached to the listing showed a clean, recently renovated space with beautiful hardwood floors, updated kitchen appliances, and large windows that let in plenty of natural light. The listing specifically stated that the landlord preferred meeting potential tenants in person rather than communicating through email. Only a phone number was provided. Jennifer called that same afternoon and spoke with a man who introduced himself as Mr. Patterson. He sounded older, maybe in his 60s, and very professional in his manner of speaking. He explained that the apartment was available for immediate occupancy, and he'd be happy to show it to her that very evening if she was interested. They arranged to meet at 7 o'clock. The address Mr. Patterson provided was in a quiet residential neighborhood. When Jennifer pulled up to the location, she found herself looking at a large Victorian-style home that had clearly been converted into multiple separate rental units. Mr. Patterson was already waiting for her on the front porch. He matched his voice perfectly. An older gentleman, probably mid-60s, well-dressed in slacks and a crisp button-up shirt. "You must be Jennifer," he said warmly, extending his hand for a professional handshake. "Thank you so much for coming out this evening. Let me show you the space." He led Jennifer around the side of the main house to a completely separate entrance. "This particular unit is actually detached from the main house," Mr. Patterson explained as they walked. "It used to be a garage, that the previous property owner converted into a studio apartment. You'll have complete privacy and your own entrance. He unlocked the door and they stepped inside together. The apartment was exactly like the photographs Jennifer had seen online. Clean, bright, freshly painted walls. There was a compact kitchenette with modern appliances, a small but functional bathroom, and the main living space that could serve as both bedroom and living room. It was absolutely perfect for what Jennifer needed. As you can see, everything has been recently updated, Mr. Patterson said, walking Jennifer through the entire space. Rent is $600 monthly, and that includes all utilities, water, electricity, heat, internet, everything. I require first and last month's rent to move in, plus a security deposit of $500. Jennifer was mentally calculating whether she could afford the upfront costs when Mr. Patterson added something that should have immediately raised red flags. Although if you're serious about taking the apartment, I'd be willing to waive that security deposit entirely. I've had some trouble recently with flaky renters who commit and then back out, so if you're ready to sign today and move in immediately, I'd be happy to work with you on that deposit. Jennifer was desperate for a place to live. This apartment was perfect. The price was unbeatable, and waiving the security deposit would save her $500 she didn't really have. I'm definitely interested, she told him. When could I potentially move in? Tonight, if you want, Mr. Patterson replied with a friendly smile. I have the lease agreement in my office. If you have the first and last month's rent available, we could sign the paperwork right now, and I could give you the keys this evening. You could start moving your things in tomorrow. Jennifer thought about it for maybe 30 seconds before agreeing. She had enough money in her bank account. She could either transfer it electronically or write a check. But Mr. Patterson said he preferred dealing in cash, which seemed slightly odd to Jennifer, but she knew a lot of private landlords prefer cash transactions to avoid reporting rental income for tax purposes. It wasn't that uncommon in her experience. There's an ATM about 10 minutes from here, Mr. Patterson said helpfully. Why don't you go withdraw the cash? I'll get all the lease paperwork prepared and organized, and when you get back, we can get you officially moved in tonight. Jennifer drove to the nearest ATM and withdrew $1,200, which represented, essentially, all the money she currently had to her name. But she figured it was absolutely worth it for such a great apartment in a safe neighborhood. When she returned to the property, Mr. Patterson had all the paperwork neatly laid out on a small desk inside the studio apartment. Jennifer sat down and began carefully reading through the lease agreement. That's when she noticed the first real red flag. The address printed on the lease document didn't match the address of the house where they currently were. She pointed out the discrepancy to Mr. Patterson. Oh, that's just the main house address for official purposes, Mr. Patterson explained quickly, waving away her concern. For tax purposes, all the rental units on this property use the same address. It's completely normal, nothing to worry about. Jennifer wasn't entirely convinced by this explanation, but Mr. Patterson seemed so professional, and the reasoning sounded at least plausible. She continued reading through the lease. Most of it was fairly standard language she'd seen in other rental agreements, except for one particular clause that caught her attention. It stated something about the landlord having access to the unit at any time for maintenance purposes or inspections. This part here about access, Jennifer said, pointing to the clause, Does this mean you can just come into the apartment whenever you want? Only for emergencies or scheduled maintenance work, Mr. Patterson assured her quickly. I always provide a minimum of 24 hours advance notice before entering any unit. That's actually required by state law, so you're fully protected. Jennifer nodded, accepting this explanation, and continued reading. Everything else in the lease appeared normal and standard. At the bottom of the final page was a signature line for her and a signature line for Mr. Patterson. Jennifer picked up the pen, preparing to sign, when Mr. Patterson's phone suddenly rang. "Excuse me for just 1 second," he said politely, stepping outside to take the call. While Mr. Patterson was outside, Jennifer looked around the apartment again. Something felt off, but she couldn't quite identify what was bothering her. She walked over to the kitchenette and, on impulse, opened one of the cabinet doors. Inside were dishes, drinking glasses, and food items. Like someone was currently living in this apartment. There were fresh groceries, an opened box of cereal, coffee mugs still sitting in the drying rack next to the sink. Jennifer's stomach dropped. She rushed to the bathroom and opened the medicine cabinet above the sink. It was completely full of toiletries, shampoo bottles, and medications with prescription labels bearing someone else's name. This apartment wasn't empty. Someone was actively living here right now. Jennifer rushed back to the main room just as Mr. Patterson came back inside. His friendly, professional demeanor had changed dramatically. He was looking at Jennifer differently now, like he knew she'd discovered something she wasn't supposed to know. "Everything okay?" he asked, but his tone was cold and flat. "Whose belongings are these?" Jennifer asked, pointing toward the kitchen area. He didn't answer right away. He just stood there, positioned between Jennifer and the only door. "What belongings?" "In the cabinets, in the bathroom. Someone is living here right now." "Oh, the previous tenant left some items behind when they moved out," Mr. Patterson said, but his explanation sounded completely hollow now. Everything about this situation felt wrong on every possible level. "I need to leave," Jennifer said firmly, grabbing her purse from the desk. Mr. Patterson moved slightly, still blocking the direct path to the door. "But you haven't signed the lease yet. You said you were very interested in renting this apartment. I changed my mind. I need to go now." Jennifer took a step toward the door, and Mr. Patterson shifted his position, still not quite letting her pass easily. "That's unfortunate. I was really hoping to get this unit rented out tonight." He pulled out his phone. "Let me just make a quick phone call." "I really need to leave right now," Jennifer said, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Mr. Patterson held up one finger, signaling her to wait, and stepped outside again to make his call. The moment he was out of the apartment, Jennifer knew she had maybe 30 seconds to act. She looked around frantically for another exit. There was a window in the small bathroom. She ran to it, unlocked it, and pushed it open. The window was small, but Jennifer managed to squeeze her body through and drop down onto the grass outside. She sprinted to her car as fast as she could possibly run. Mr. Patterson emerged from the studio apartment just as Jennifer was starting her engine. He wasn't running after her or yelling, but he was watching her with this completely blank, emotionless expression that made Jennifer's blood run cold. She drove away and didn't stop driving until she was several miles away in a well-lit, populated parking lot. Jennifer immediately called the police and told them everything that had happened. They dispatched an officer to check out the address she provided, The results of their investigation were deeply disturbing. The house wasn't owned by anyone named Mr. Patterson. He had no legal right to be there at all. The actual owners of the property were away on an extended vacation, and Mr. Patterson had somehow learned about their absence and was using their property to run an elaborate scam. He was showing the rental unit to desperate renters, collecting cash for first and last month's rent, plus security deposits, and then vanishing before people realized they'd been conned out of their money. But the detective Jennifer spoke with said her case was different from typical rental scams. The fact that there were clearly someone's personal belongings still in the apartment, the fact that Mr. Patterson was so insistent she sign a lease with those unusual clauses about him having unlimited access to the unit, it all pointed to something much darker than a simple financial scam. The detective believed Mr. Patterson might have been planning to give Jennifer keys that actually worked, allow her to move in, and then show up whenever he wanted because technically she'd signed a legal document giving him unrestricted access to the apartment. The detective mentioned they'd received reports of someone matching Mr. Patterson's physical description being involved in multiple stalking cases and breaking and entering incidents where he'd enter occupied apartments while tenants were home. The police never caught him. The phone number he'd given Jennifer was a burner phone that was disconnected by the time police attempted to call it. Mr. Patterson obviously wasn't his real name. The description Jennifer provided didn't match anyone in their database of known offenders. He's probably out there right now posting fake rental listings, meeting with desperate people looking for affordable housing, with nobody aware of what they're really walking into until it's almost too late. Jennifer eventually found a legitimate apartment about a month later through a licensed property management company. But she still thinks about that night, constantly. How close she came to handing over all her money and essentially signing away her safety to a complete stranger. How she almost entered into a situation where a predator would have had legal access to her home whenever he wanted. 3 stories, 3 near misses, 3 people who almost became victims because they trusted a stranger on the internet. The world of online marketplaces and classified ads can be incredibly useful, but it's also become a hunting ground for predators who've learned to weaponize our trust, our desire for good deals, and our basic human instinct to see the good in people. If you take anything away from tonight's episode, let it be this. When meeting someone from Craigslist or any online platform, always meet in genuinely public places during daytime hours. Never ever give out your home address until you've verified who you're dealing with. If someone pressures you to move to a second location, that's a massive red flag. And most importantly, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. Thank you so much for watching Silent Fear tonight. If these stories gave you chills, please smash that like button. Leave a comment with your thoughts or your own experiences, and subscribe to our channel for more terrifying true stories every single week. Stay safe out there. And remember, the scariest monsters aren't hiding under your bed. They're hiding behind computer screens, waiting for you to let your guard down. Until next time, this is Silent Fear, reminding you that sometimes the best deal is the one you walk away from.